Hello gamers from around the world, this is Boxenberger, the video game enthusiast from Germany, and I would like to welcome you to today's episode of the World of Gaming. And today we have the absolute honor to have Luke back as a guest on the show. It's been a while, man. How have you been?
Yeah, it has been a while, but very happy to be here, and I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, there's been a lot that's happened since I last was here, actually, even though it wasn't that long ago. Especially in the last week or so, there's been a lot of news. So I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Sweet. Me too, man. Me too. It's so funny because the last time you were here, I think it was in October, and we said, okay, the next time we have you on, we will not need your expertise as a lawyer on the whole ABK acquisition drama.
And here we are.
Almost half a year later, and we're still talking about it. So, but we will still get you on. Even I hope that you will come on at least, even if the deal has sealed, because we just love your insights here.
Thank you very much.
Looking forward to the show with you, man. And Dutch, how have you been, my friend?
Yes, I'm very well, very well. I'm glad to be back podcasting again this week, of course. So I didn't do the midweek last week, as I'd only just got back from holiday. So I'm glad to be back into the whole podcasting swing again properly. So
sweet.
Yeah, I'm good.
Glad to hear it. And of course, let me also welcome everyone in the chat. I see a lot of familiar names there. Welcome to you guys. And of course, welcome to everyone who listens after the fact, either here on YouTube or on the podcast services around the globe, because good news, Dutch, our little show is growing there as well. We have made it into the top 10 charts in video games in South Africa. So shout out to our friends in South Africa on Spotify. And of course, shout out to everyone else around the world. But I wanted to highlight that because I'm glad to see that we are growing on an international basis, which is simply awesome. So, guys, today we have a great show. For you guys, we have a lot to talk about. A lot of topics have been missed by other podcasts that I have listened to this week. So we will talk, of course, about a lot of new games announcements. We will talk about a new Xbox game that has been announced. We will talk about some things that concern or regard E3 and Gamescom. Diablo 4, I'm already shaking. Super excited, guys. The countdown is coming, and you know where to find me over the weekend. Gonna play the hell out of Diablo. I had to do it. Okay. And then we have, yes, of course, a lot of Xbox ABK stuff to talk about, the PS5 Pro rumors, and a lot more. But first, we definitely need to talk about our games of the week. So I definitely want to know from you, gentlemen, what have you been playing this week? Luke.
I've been playing quite a bit, not in big amounts, but kind of grazing a little bit on some different things. So still playing through Wolong, which I'm really enjoying, actually. Really cool game.
Sweet.
Has that kind of typical Team Ninja feeling. I think if you like Neo, you'll like this a lot, which I did.
Where's the difficulty level with this? Because I have downloaded it and I have not started yet because I'm not in the Souls mood at the moment. But where does it land with the difficulty?
Yeah,
it's not on the level of Sekiro.
No,
if you were okay on Sekiro, you'll be good.
Okay.
Although, I think it's not on the level of Sekiro in terms of difficulty, but the kind of combat premise is very similar. So it relies heavily on parrying, which Sekiro did as well. But it's not as difficult. And really, if you can beat the first boss of Wolong, I'd say you're pretty good for the rest of the game, because the first boss is kind of like a really, not super difficult, but it's more difficult than any other boss I've encountered so far. Okay. So but I think it's kind of like it's a nice bite-sized Souls game, because it's entirely level mission designed. You just run through an area, there's a boss at the end, you're done, and then you move on. It's not kind of like the open path of Sekiro, Elden Ring, or anything like that. So It's a cool game. I'm enjoying it. So I've been playing that. I've been playing, working my way very slowly through the Metroid Prime remaster, which is incredible.
Yeah, it is. I've been playing that as well.
Yeah.
Do love it, really.
Yeah, it's unbelievable how good that
Yeah.
looks on Nintendo Switch. Retro have done a really incredible job. So playing that, and then I've also been playing some Gran Turismo 7, which I didn't think I'd ever enjoy because I'm not a big sim racer fan, but I'm actually loving it. I've sunk a lot of hours into it, actually. I've been playing that on 2D pancake mode and on PSVR 2 as well. Nice. That's really cool. And then on PSVR 2, I've been playing a little bit of Pistol Whip, which is a really cool little game. And I just finished yesterday Before Your Eyes, which I think released yesterday or the day before, which is like a 2-hour game, but it was a really great experience, really cool. Sweet. A lot of different things. Good
stuff there. Good stuff there. The Metroid Prime remaster is truly a gem. I told that yesterday to Dutch that I think I have not played a game that runs this smooth on the Switch.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's amazing. Yeah. And it's so weird that because usually Nintendo does very little things with their remasters, and they basically sell you the game all over again at full price. And this time they have actually made almost a remake.
I was going to say it's kind of a visual remake. I booted it. I've recently played Metroid Prime, the original, because I have the original copy, and I emulated it through the Steam Deck, and you can obviously kind of overlay kind of a higher resolution on that and get it to look really nice. And then I went to it, so I had it in my head and went to the Switch version, and it's just like a huge lift. It's like Dead Space OG to Dead Space level remake. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. I had to look up something on YouTube because I was stuck, and I only found like a guide from the OG GameCube version. Yeah, and when you look at that and then watch at your screen and compare it, it's crazy. It's crazy good.
Crazy.
Yeah, definitely. So Dutch, before I want to hear from you, what you've been playing, I of course want to know from everyone in the chat as well what you have been playing, and I need to shout out Tronty J, who sends in the first super chat of the day. Thank you for the $2. He says, "Hey guys, Boxy have been slipping. Lol. Yeah, last week it was the case that I'd dropped out of the platinum rank in Age of Empires 4, but I can calm the concern. I'm back in the platinum rank, and I'm this close to actually hit platinum 2. Only need to win one more match, and then I'm in the plat 2. So trying some new strategies against the AI and lower tier players before I'm going to try to get into plat 2. No, I'm not slipping anymore, TJ. I'm not. All right, Dutch, what have you been playing, man?
Yeah, so much like Luke, I've been grazing a bit since I've come back from holiday. So I've played numerous things. I've played Call of Duty, obviously Modern Warfare 2, but co-op. Well, first say some PvP with Pat. I've played some Forza Horizon with Daz and Paul and a few others.
Sweet.
Pat as well. Actually, I think he jumped in for a bit. I've played some Age of Empires 2 on console, again with a friend, co-op campaign. I played a little bit of Merging Blade, which again is that little indie game that came onto Game Pass. And I think that is pretty much it at the moment, but I have just downloaded the Diablo 4 beta.
Oh, yeah.
So I am looking forward to that this weekend.
Yeah, me too, man. I'm so ready.
You're tempting me, guys. Yeah, I can't hear these mentions of Diablo games.
I've actually talked to someone who had the chance to do one of the previews that came out like 6-7 weeks ago. Yeah, and he told me really that it is as good as everyone says it is. It has like this the mood and atmosphere of Diablo 2 combined with butter smooth modern controls and new mechanics and everything. It's apparently really good. And and you can play through the entire Act 1. You can level up until up to level 25. The only thing is, and Luke, you told us that in the green room, yeah, you cannot carry over your progress to the main game when that comes out. But hey, I'm gonna use this to figure out which class I want to play, and then when it comes out in June, I'm good to go. What kind of classes do you usually play in these games?
Well, I already know that I'm playing Necromancer in this,
nice.
100%, but I actually usually play Barbarian.
Okay.
But this time, it's got to be Necromancer.
Necromancer. Sweet. How about you?
Yeah, mostly brute force, so it's always Barbarian or something along those lines. Yeah, I just love the brute force. I'll let somebody else do the ranged damage.
Yeah, you want to get in there, mix it up.
Yeah. Sweet. So I usually play like a sorcerer or something like damage dealer. So that's where I'm gonna start it this weekend. But I definitely want to play try out the Necromancer and of course maybe the Archer or whatever it's called. So yeah, there's a lot of good stuff happening over the weekend. I can feel it. So what have people in chat been playing? Let us see. The community. Dustin Lambert. Hang on, that was a joke. He did not post what he's been playing. So we have here Tony Okami, Metroid Prime. And he asked, where is Metroid 4? That's a very good question. We all want it. Tom from Toonami is playing Formula 122 and says it's addicting. Dustin Lambert actually posted a little later in the chat that he's playing that Gundam game on Game Pass. It's pretty fun. What else? Sergeant Sentinel Gaming is playing Grand Theft Auto 4 and Division 2. Two fantastic games. Crispy Rambo is trying out Valheim. I actually tried that as well this week, and it's not for me. I don't know. It looks and plays like a game from the 2000s. I don't know. I expect something else, but I do hope you enjoy it, my man. Jeremy Brown is playing Resident Evil 5 and Division 2 currently. Sweet, a couple of Division 2 players here. Then we have Paul AFC. He's playing Inside and Returnal. Nice. Inside. Dude, when you have finished, hit me up in the DMs and let me know what you think about the ending.
Yeah, the last 40 minutes of that game.
Yeah,
pretty wild.
They are indeed. Little Conker is playing Forza Horizon 5 and Deathloop. Sweet. So yeah, good of stuff. Siki is playing Halo and Fortnite. You can never go wrong with that. RSJ fan says he's gonna play a rogue as a rogue in Diablo. So that's good. And Meisuko says he's been playing Night in the Woods and Crafty Survivors Psychonauts 2 this week. Very good choices. So our community plays some good stuff as always. So yeah, what have I been playing? After finishing The Witcher 3, my next gen playthrough, I went back and actually jumped a little bit in Skyrim. And then I played a lot of Metroid Prime. And of course, I had to fight my way back. And I mentioned that I had to fight my way back into the Platinum League. And I actually recorded the match that brought me back to Platinum. So, gentlemen, you two can now choose what gameplay do we show the community here during the podcast. I have recorded 2 different matches because the first is, of course, the match has brought me back to Platinum. And the other match is I played with a good friend of mine. And we played ranked online co-op matches, which was really fun because he's also a Platinum player. And we kicked some ass there in ranked online matches. So what do we want to throw here up on screen while we talk about all the news of the week?
I think we need to see. I think we need to see your redemption story.
The redemption story. All right. Okay. Yes. So we're definitely gonna throw that up in 1 second because I'm super bad at multitasking. But nice. So we have H4 and where is it? This one. There we go. That's the redemption story. And while we watch that, we definitely got to talk about the news of the week because a lot of stuff has happened this week. And first and most importantly, we got a lot of infos on upcoming games and new games got announced. So one thing that stood out to me is actually Atlas Fallen has revealed a gameplay showcase and a trailer. Have you guys seen that game?
Yeah, I saw the trailer. Yeah.
So what did you think?
Considering, so it's by Deck 13, right? Which I think is the Lords of the Fallen guys from back in the day, and Surge, etc. So I've actually played Lords of the Fallen. I really liked Lords of the Fallen, actually. I thought it was quite good. Surge less so, and Surge 2 even less than that. And I wasn't really expecting that much from this, but I thought the trailer looked quite nice. It kind of looked like a current gen game. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think their technology has always been quite good. If you look at Lords of the Fallen and the Surge games, they actually look quite nice, and for the time they were very, very nice looking games. So I think this was cool, and I really like the idea that all the weapons it's like sand powers, right? So like all your weapons are made from sand and stuff, so you're basically just the Sandman from Spider-Man, which is cool, except in this kind of fantasy worlds. So I actually really like the look. The only criticism I had was they really built up to this gameplay reveal, and actually it's like a trailer just spliced with gameplay. I thought it was going to be like 3 or 4 minutes of uncut footage, or at least more than they showed. But what they did show looked nice. But that's the only criticism. Don't build up to a big gameplay reveal and then actually show little snippets of gameplay. Like give me like something meaty,
You're muted.
Oh, damn it. So I was just saying, yeah, I know exactly what you mean because I felt the exact same. Of course, I wanted to see like, I don't know, a 10-minute game, continued gameplay narrated or whatever. But what I've seen looked fantastic, and Focus Home is the publisher. The last couple of games they published were really, on a technical level, very impressive. If we think about, of course, A Plague Tale Requiem, if we think about Evil West, and now Atlas Fallen, and even Atomic Heart, they all quite the looker. So, what did you think of this this trailer and the game?
Yeah, it looks all right. It's certainly interesting. But again, I'm very careful with what I'm what I'm thinking of playing in the future as well, because obviously with the amount and the volume of games coming out, it's a case of, is this like it looks cool, but am I actually going to invest any time in this game? Probably not.
Okay.
If it comes to me at no additional cost or as part of a subscription, I'll try it out. But likelihood of me going out and buying Atlas Fallen is probably slim to none.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
Looks good though.
It does look good. It looks like honestly like my type of game. I like these hack and slash kind of challenging games. That it is definitely on my radar. The only problem is like that what you said. We have to plan our gaming time very well, because there is just so much coming out. In the next couple of months, but
and it's not like the little games either. Like what's coming. Like Diablo is not a small game. Starfield
Yeah.
is not a small game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jedi will be at least 20 something hours, at least minimum. It's much
Redfall
bigger than
won't
the
be a
last.
small game either.
Yeah, Redfall will be
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
big.
That also got a story trailer today. Have you guys
Yes.
seen that?
I have
Yeah.
the Gods trailer.
What did you think?
Looked awesome. Looked
Look
awesome.
nice. It's
Yeah.
it's growing on me a lot. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
same.
that's the
Not-
thing with every trailer.
yeah.
It seems to grow a little bit more.
Yeah, it kind of gets a little more polished, a little bit better every trailer.
Yeah.
It looks nice. Yeah, I don't know how arcane-y it will be ultimately. I think they've had to sacrifice some of that just by the nature of the game, which is like a downside for me because I like arcane games to be arcane-y, like immersive sim style. But I think this looks really good, and I'm getting really excited for it actually. Plus, we don't get enough vampire games, so it's cool just to have a vampire game.
Yeah. It's a welcome change compared to all the zombie games we get. So
Yeah.
Speaking of zombie games, though, we have to say Dead Island 2 is actually looking really good.
it does look good.
Yeah.
It does.
Previews were positive. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was
it does.
surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jedi Survivor is also coming, which is also apparently they said it takes you about 25 hours to complete the campaign. So also not the smallest game. If you want to do some of the side stuff as well, it's gonna keep us busy. Yeah. Drawn TJ sends in a $2 super chat and says, "Don't forget Test Drive and Dead Island." Yeah, we just mentioned Dead Island, but yeah, Test Drive is also coming. Soul Crown.
It's been a bit quiet, that one, though. It's a case of waiting to see what happens.
You think it is a candidate for
I think it is a possible candidate for getting pushed till 24.
Mm.
I haven't I've literally heard nothing of it since last year.
Yeah. Yeah. Me neither. So we shall see. Then we got some unpleasant news about Stalker 2. The GSC Game World, the developers, have announced that they have been hacked by Russians and that want to leak the game, that they have stolen multiple gigabytes of assets, and that they urge everyone to not share the possible leaks because they will not react to blackmail. So, have you seen that, Luke?
Yeah. I mean, it's. Good for GSC. I think it's unbelievable what they've put together, given the circumstances around their game and the continuing circumstances around their game and the development.
Indeed.
And then, capped up with this, and to be so kind of resolute about it and to say,
Yeah,
whatever, we're just going to make our game. It also looks like the trailer that they released a few months ago looked incredible.
Yeah,
it's absolutely
January.
Incredible.
Yeah, it does, and we're gonna see it very soon in action next week during the Game Developer Conference. They have announced that they will be showing the game off on the NVIDIA stage, so that's gonna be interesting to see. Maybe we get a release date. I would love that.
You never know. I've just actually seen that Xbox/Microsoft have put out a tweet today as well mentioning GDC, and they're doing, I think, something along the lines of about 22 shows in total. No, something like, actually, ignore that. 22 physical shows at GDC and 11 online only shows.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to have a big presence at GDC in terms of the volume of stuff that they're pumping out there.
Yeah,
it's going to be a lot to learn. If someone's interested in obviously the Game Development Conference and things that go from the technological standpoint of game development, definitely tune in if you want to learn a little bit more.
Yeah,
it's always good to learn.
I for me it's a highlight, just like the bigger showcases. Honestly, I love GDC. I love to learn how the magic is made. Can't wait, man. Can't wait. So IO Interactive also announced a couple of things about their studio and, of course, the upcoming games. They've said that Hitman is, and I quote now, a little bit on hiatus. They want to first finish the James Bond game, of course, and the Project Dragon. And they have opened up a new studio in Istanbul. So in Turkey, they have now a support studio that will work on Project 007 and Project Fantasy, what they call it. So, guys, it's been a while since we have seen anything from them. They have the 2 games in the making, the GoldenEye, or not GoldenEye, the 007 James Bond game, and of course the what is rumored to be an Xbox exclusive, the Project Dragon. What do you guys think? Will we see some of the games this year, or at least one of the games?
It's a toughie. I don't know. I think it depends on when because as much as Hitman's been out for quite a while, they've recently, as people might not know, kind of rebranded Hitman and all of the games that came out for Hitman recently, and put it into one block.
The World of Assassination.
Yeah. And they've not too long ago finished doing that and making sure that's up and running properly. So it depends. It depends on how much of the team has now moved over and how far along they are in development. But I'm probably swaying along the lines of it's more likely to be next year when we see whatever they're working on, as opposed to this year.
Yeah.
Could be.
Yeah, I think. I mean, Project Dragon. I think that adds. That announcement was clearly like a recruitment drive for that game more than anything. So I don't think that's going to be seen this year.
Yeah.
Probably not for a while. James Bond, maybe because they haven't actually shown anything of that game, like not apart from that kind of small little,
graphic
sizzle trailer. Yeah, just we're making a James Bond game. So maybe they'll give something around, maybe another CG trailer around premise, that sort of stuff. When's it set, kind of the look and feel of James Bond, etc. So, yeah, but I think they'll probably have their heads down for a little while. So just making their games. But I'm quite excited about both their projects actually. So
yeah, same. I mean, yeah, Project Dragon, but I want to see a Bond game. That makes so much sense for the studio, given their track record.
It does.
So, yeah, it's really exciting. So we shall see. There are a lot of game shows this year, so maybe we see it at some point. Or Project Dragon. So what else has been announced in gaming this week? We have finally the announcement of a new game on the Xbox side of things. Ghostwire Tokyo is coming to Game Pass next month, along with new enemies, new areas, and a new roguelike mode that will be included for the first time, of course, on Xbox, but also in all the other versions on the PlayStation and PC. And that's gonna come out on April 12th. So, to our knowledge, this is now the last deal, exclusive or timed exclusive deal that Bethesda had prior to the acquisition of Bethesda by Xbox. So yeah, and it's now coming to Game Pass. Are you guys excited for the game, or have you already played it?
Yeah, I haven't played it yet. I was reluctant, especially because the game, essentially the games came out as the deal was closing. The deal closed and then the game's released. So it was a case of, I know these games will come to Xbox now.
Yeah.
What would I invest in these games knowing that they're going into Game Pass in the future? Unlikely. Would I get them specific for PlayStation when they're Xbox games? It's unlikely. I've always kept and if anybody who's ever listened to me about PlayStation, I literally only ever play PlayStation exclusives on PlayStation. So this is no different. And it's the same for Xbox. For the most part, I'd like to play my multi-plats and Xbox exclusives on Xbox. And again, for PC, it's entirely different. For PC, that's pretty much up until very recently the platform that I play the likes of Age of Empires and RTS games and things like that. I leave solely to PC, as it's definitely the better platform for RTS. 100%. Yeah. So, no, I waited on it, but I am super excited for it, especially the fact that it has got this Spider Thread update as well, which looks quite interesting. There's a whole new load of levels with new equipment, new missions, new character. There's a roguelite mode, so they've added loads of new content with this one. So it's gonna be interesting to try it. I've heard kind of mixed things for people who've played it on, not negatively mixed things. It's mainly people either liked it or they thought it was okay. But generally, those are the games that have ended up being really good for me. Whereas I think we were on the same lines for Deathloop. That thing got high praise, and I don't think it lived up to it when I come to play it. Like, I didn't really enjoy my time with it. I thought it was okay, but it wasn't like great.
Yeah,
certainly wasn't a 10 out of 10.
No, it wasn't. What do you think, Luke?
Well, just to add, I completely agree on Deathloop. Yeah, I played it and I was like, 10, really? Like, Game of the Year. I didn't enjoy it, which is weird because again, it was an arcane game, right? Like, it was super arcane, but I just really didn't. I think it was the setting, I really didn't vibe with the kind of 70s psychedelic kind of off-piste setting. I just didn't like that. Ghostwire I was really hyped for, actually, because it's Tango, and it was Ikumi Nakamura's game before she left the studio, and then it kind of came out and the reception was kind of like and it kind of really put me off buying it because I would have bought it. So from that point on, I was like, well, I'll just wait because it's going to come to Game Pass in about a year or so or whatever. So I'm quite looking forward now to playing it. And obviously, as Dutch said, it's had this big update, which hopefully maybe addresses some of the concerns or issues people had when the game originally came out. So really, we'll be getting the best version of it now. So we'll see on its own merits whether it's good or not. But I'm looking forward to jumping into it anyway.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. It looked interesting, but not interesting enough for me to play it on PlayStation or PC. So yeah, I will definitely check it out now that it comes to Game Pass. But yeah, I wasn't super excited about Deathloop either, and I have a very similar feeling here as well, Dutch and Luke. So yeah, we shall see. Hopefully,
like I say, for me, I think the good thing, unlike Deathloop, which it got like hyped through the roof by critics.
Yeah.
Who was saying that it was Game of the Year material, and it was like so good, and it was amazing, it was refreshing. And I was like, and I played it, and I was like, I mean, it feels quite clunky. The weapons don't feel that great.
Yeah.
Like, it is repetitive by its literal nature. It is repetitive. You're playing the entire idea of the game over and over again until you eventually complete the game. I'm like, okay. So I fell off it pretty quickly. Unlike this, Ghostwire was kind of a mixed bag when it came to reviews, which means that it was. I think it felt more like a genuine review from reviewers as opposed to Deathloop, which I think was kind of artificially inflated. And it's a weird thing to say that, but I think Ghostwire might have the higher possibility here of actually being the more interesting game out of the two of them. It's not to say that we'll love it, but I think it's got a better chance that we'll actually enjoy this one more.
Let's hope so. We shall see. Not far. In less than 3 weeks, 4 weeks, we will find out, and we get to play it. And it actually comes out at a good time, because it comes out like 2 weeks before the busy period starts with Jedi Survivor, and of course then Redfall and Zelda and everything we get in May. So let's see how we will enjoy that game. So Dutch, you and we are going to Gamescom this year. Yeah. Of course, we need to follow the news of Gamescom, and Gamescom announced that the early bird registrations for exhibitors went up 10%, and they promised that the major companies will return, and that actually one or the other major company that was not present last year, is the official quote, will return. At the same time, Microsoft confirmed that they will not be present this year at the E3 showcase. So I wanted to chat with you guys about this. How do we feel about E3? Microsoft not coming. We know PlayStation's not gonna be there. We also know Nintendo is not gonna be there. Microsoft will still stream their showcase via as an E3 event, but again, they won't be present at the show floor. So how we are feeling about this? On the one hand, we have Gamescom announcing that major publishers are going to return. Of course, we will still have to figure out or see who they are actually talking about. But are you guys excited for the shows? And what do you think about E3? Will it come back in the same form we all want it to come back? Or how do we feel about this, Luke?
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Although I can kind of get what's happening here a little bit, which is, I think that trade shows in general have been dying for a little while, and that was accelerated obviously by COVID.
Yes.
And the ones that are surviving are the ones that are actually not really trade shows, but fan shows, and that are kind of pivotal to exposure in a region. So Gamescom, it doesn't surprise me that they're actually doing really well, because in terms of footfall, right, it's much larger than E3 ever is. It actually has more visitors, and it effectively is supposed to cover Europe, right? That's the point of that's the point of the show. Whereas E3, obviously, it has been diminishing for a number of years anyway. You have all the Reed Pop stuff that have kind of come in to try and help this a bit. But I think the ESA, it's really difficult for them, because I think COVID has basically shown people that big publishers, platform holders, you can get exposure at a level higher than E3, and you don't have to spend a fraction of what you would spend on E3 to do so, and you can do it in your own time without any competition from anyone else. So it's a no-brainer for these companies just to be like, you know what, we'll kind of be in the period, but we're not affiliating directly with E3. It's just that this is kind of a good time. And then Gamescom as well has the Keighley effect, which is that he hosts Opening Night Live. Yeah. And he, that's become like quite a big show. Not as big as like Summer Game Fest or anything like that, but I think really, and I know people won't like this, but a lot of the industry kind of goes where Keighley says these days, because he's cultivated such an impressive repertoire of shows that are watched by a lot of people. So, and he knows what he's doing with this stuff, right? So I think he's kind of leading the charge on it. And I mean, who would have thought 15 years ago that Jeff Keighley would effectively be one of the primary contributors to the downfall of something like E3. But I don't know what E3 needs, I don't know what the ESA need to do to be able to change that, apart from maybe they need to try and get Keighley back and get it, to a bigger level than it is. But it's just I just can't see it returning in the same way anymore. Whereas I think other fan shows like Gamescom, etc., there will always be a place for those. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I do agree. I think, I mean, if we look historically at what E3 has been, it has actually been not for the public. It has been actually a trade event for retail sellers. Yeah, they all the way back in the early 90s. That's where they learned about the games that come out in the holiday season, in which games they have to order for their stores and whatnot. So that's where they come historically from. Then they opened it up for the press, and it became this like big event for the community and everything, which is great, of course. And now they have opened up for the public. But then, like, at the same time, not just COVID happened, that the downfall of E3 began before that. And they had like that problem where why would you invest a lot of money on the show floor at E3, which is super expensive compared to other trade shows? Yeah, when it's simply a fan event, because you don't need the E3 setting to have like your booths and whatnot. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know what they need to do to come back in a big time either. But then, like, Gamescom was also struggling with getting the bigger publishers last year, and maybe it's just that they have to do 1 or 2 or 3 shows again before the publishers will be willing to invest back in them. So yeah, we shall see. Dutch, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, E3's had an issue for quite a while. As soon as a few of the big guys started pulling out. And it wasn't that they were just pulling out. They were kind of at that point even still doing their shows, but they weren't doing them with E3 in mind. They were doing them around E3, but not with E3. And then not doing any show floor presence. And Microsoft is doing exactly the same thing now. I mean, the likely reason why they do Gamescom still and don't do E3 is there's a much higher footfall of traffic that goes through Gamescom than there is with E3. Much higher. A significant level higher. Like Gamescom, in terms of the amount of people that go there on the actual show floor, is significant. Millions and millions of people, kind of over a course of a few days, kind of attend Gamescom, which is of course significant enough for them to want to have a presence there. Whereas E3.
Are you prepared for the 300,000+ people there?
Yeah,
it's madness, man.
And that's the thing with E3. Like it's because it hasn't had a physical presence in so long, and they haven't. I mean, they've worked with the guys from PAX to try and make it a better experience physically for people. But even saying then, a lot of the big publishers aren't attending E3 either. So, to be honest, at this stage, I don't know whether or not they can return with it anymore. Obviously, Microsoft will still have their show. I know Microsoft will have FanFest surrounding their show as well.
Yeah.
So they will have a physical presence for an Xbox FanFest around their showcase.
Have they confirmed that? Because that is what I heard this week as a big controversial point, because you know, a lot of friends of ours from the content creation scene have already booked their hotels and Airbnbs. The likes of Mr. Boomstick and a couple of others have booked an Airbnb together. And now that they have the fair question, okay, will it actually be live? Because they only said like they will be co-streaming it along with E3. But what does that mean? Yeah, is there going to be an actual physical presence, a physical show? Will they have like something in their convention center close to E3, or is this really like?
They'll have the show itself, which is what they've done a couple of times now. So I think the show itself will still be pre-recorded, but it will be at the Microsoft Theatre.
Okay, so like a cinema experience then.
big cinema experience.
Yeah.
But the big guys, the ones that are hosting it, etc., will, as they have done previously, come on stage, talk to the fans that are attending FanFest, etc.,
Yeah.
and then let the show commence. And that's when the stream will be co-streamed. But there will be a physical fan fest prior to the show and potentially after the show as well. But that is on the 11th of June. That isn't E3, which is I think a week later or something like that. So as much as the E3 can kind of claim it, and Jeff Keighley will claim it as part of, what they did that year when both E3 and Jeff were both claiming the showcases. They were like, "It's our showcase. We're streaming the showcase," and E3 were doing the same thing. It was like, "Guys, it's none of your showcase. You can see you're co-streaming it, but it's like it doesn't belong to any of you. It is literally, this is Sony's show. This is Microsoft's show. None of you have the rights to it. You have just been able to stream it again on your show because Microsoft have said yes, and Sony have said yes." Nintendo's the outlier. Do I think Nintendo are going to have a what they used to do, Treehouse Live again? And I hope they do, because I also missed Treehouse Lives. I thought they were quite cool.
They were. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know whether or not Nintendo will, and Sony needs to at this point. Sony needs to have a showcase. It's been 18 months.
They do. They really do.
18 months. And we have absolutely zero idea. Now, another interesting fact, of course, is that Neil Druckmann was on the Not Defining Dukes, the other one, the PlayStation-centric version of just Defining Duke under the same...
from Colin Moriarty.
Yes, he's on that show.
Sacred Symbols.
Yes, that's the one. And he mentioned that fans will learn more about The Last of Us multiplayer this year. He did not say the game is coming out this year. He said they will learn more about it this year.
Wasn't it scheduled for this year? Didn't they say it's going to come out this year?
No, he said last year that, and he said last year you'll see a lot more of it this year.
Okay. So the likelihood is then we won't have The Last of Us multiplayer this year, which still leaves literally only Spider-Man as their only first-party game to come out this year, aside from VR stuff. So at this point, we have to start asking PlayStation, like, we need to see what your roadmap is.
Yeah, we do.
Whether that's 12 months, 6 months, whatever it is, what are you working on? Because it's not just us, like, as a generic for your consumers. Once the Square Enix stuff is out the way of this year and you're left with just Spider-Man, like, even if you take the Square Enix stuff out of it, you have one game releasing this year. That's not as bad as Microsoft last year, who had 0 games releasing.
Yeah.
But it's nearly there. It's nearly there, and it does need to be called out. Now we're asking Microsoft for consistency. PlayStation can't fall on rhetorics and think, "Oh, we're ahead, so we're just going to slack off." That's not how you remain ahead. No. If they want to stay ahead of the game and they want to keep pushing competition, they need to stop focusing on what everybody else is doing and make sure they're releasing content.
I agree.
As it stands right now, they've only got one game coming out this year, and we have no idea what showcase.
I mean, they have Final Fantasy, and they had Forspoken earlier this year, but those are second-party exclusives, and I fully agree. It's so weird because when you look back at the PlayStation 4 generation, they had that in their playbook so well to lay out the roadmap. You know, when they said, okay, we have Death Stranding, didn't even have an engine when they announced it, but it's coming down the line, and here's God of War and Days Gone and Ghost of Tsushima, and you knew what you will get when you invest in the PlayStation ecosystem. And this time around, we don't have that. Luke,
we know that Death Stranding 2 is being made, which is good. Yeah. And actually, the trailer for Death Stranding 2 looked far more interesting than Death Stranding did. It looks like it's full of a lot more action in this game than the first game. And I think the good thing about the first game is in Death Stranding 1, it was about reconnecting people. Death Stranding 2 is very much everyone is connected at that point, and then the story continues on from there. It looks like it's a little bit more a little bit more advanced than that. It doesn't look like it's got anything to do with like parcel delivery, which is a lot of people took issue with, and I understand. But there was a lot more cool mechanics within that game.
Yeah.
That, once elaborated upon, were actually quite interesting, and there was a lot of good little scary moments and things with some of the creatures and the ghosts and things. It was very well done, but I can understand why people fall off it quite quickly. However, DS2 looks a lot more interesting. That said, it's a Kojima game, so it's not coming out anytime soon. He's going to take his time on that one. It'll be out when it's ready.
He's also working on the other game, the Xbox
game.
Cloud game. They've been posting a couple of pictures from Aaron Greenberg visiting.
I suspect we will see something this year, and I say that because Jeff Keighley, of all people, of course he did, having a lovely catch up with Kojima on his Twitter the other day. So, best pals that he is, I suspect there has to be something to do with Summer Game Fest and not just a normal catch up.
Could be.
It's too close to Summer Game Fest to not have that conversation.
Yeah,
so
true.
I don't think it's going to be so. Obviously, we know his Sony game is Death Stranding 2, so it's not going to be that. We've seen that now. So the likelihood is it's probably going to be the Xbox game.
Yeah.
Which it could be a case of with the Xbox show coming first before Summer Game Fest. We'll likely see something at Xbox's show if whatever he's working on is ready to show, or even a hint, and then he shows more of it with Jeff Keighley.
Yeah.
Or more of an in-depth gameplay thing at Jeff Keighley's show. But with that said, that's the only other game we know of. The others are second. Well, they're all second-party. Game.
They are. Luke, what do you think about PlayStation and their missing showcases and announcements of content coming?
Yeah, I think I pretty much agree, to be honest. I think that I can sort of get what they were trying to do last year, which was that they just thought, well, we've got such a good lineup of games this year that we don't really need to lay out a roadmap right now, so we don't need to have a big showcase. We can just kind of pepper, some announcements here and there.
Yeah.
But that's done now. So now is the time that they need to. I think Jeff Grubb maybe talked about the point of the next showcase, and obviously he's pretty reliable, was to set out the next phase of PlayStation 5 first-party games, as he called it. So they need to have one because they have a lot of developers that don't have announcements attached to them at all. Even though we can kind of, with some developers, we can kind of guess what they're working on. Sucker Punch are probably working on another Ghost of Tsushima game, a sequel. You've got Ben's game, which is a new IP, Naughty Dog's main project, and then also the Factions 2. But it'd be nice to see that, right? Because the thing that PlayStation have always been really good at is, selling you on a dream, saying, okay, look at what's coming in the future. It's going to be a while, but we've got all this stuff coming. And they did it a bit back in their maybe their second big showcase, when they showed off Spider-Man 2 and Wolverine and stuff. But, that we still don't have those. Spider-Man 2 is coming, which is great. And this year, they've got that, but they are using the kind of second-party, third-party exclusive stuff to pad that out. They've got Horizon Burning Shores next month as well, but as DLC, which I'm looking forward to. I'm sure it would be great, but it's not the kind of huge thing that you really
it's like the Forza Horizon DLC. It's like
exactly, maybe a bit bigger than that, but it's still DLC. I mean. No, completely agree. Yeah, like everybody's looking forward to that. I'm sure, well, not everybody, but
there
I'm
was
really
some news about this this week. They said that it's gonna be only available on the PlayStation 5, while the base game was still available on of course the PS4. The DLC will now only be available on PS5 because they have apparently a couple of boss fights in there that were not possible to run. They've got the. Is it the Horus, which is the huge, desolate mechs that you see across in the base game, which are like the big kind of, they look a bit like the
the Guardians from Zelda, but just like 10 times big. So it looks like that will be one of the boss battles, which will be incredible, but I imagine it would have been impossible to do justice on PlayStation 4 to some extent, considering how big those things are and presumably what's going to go on in the environment. So it looks really good. But yeah, the point is that it's still DLC, right? It's just a Frozen Wilds type expansion, which is great, and it's great if you have the game and you enjoyed it, like I did. But it's you want bigger stuff, you want big, fully fledged releases. So
yeah.
I'm actually more excited to see what Corey's working on because it isn't God of War. It's a separate project entirely that is aside from God of War, and that's the one I'm more
apparently
interested in.
It's sci-fi, is what the rumors say.
It seems like Pod and Corey had the same thoughts here. I want to make a space game.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see what you've both got. So, but again, Corey's storytelling and Sony Santa Monica's storytelling to me is fantastic. So, whatever he creates, I've got full faith that it will be really good. Both from an environmental perspective and the actors he gets to work with and brings into the show. Like he's had, like God of War Ragnarok had some phenomenal actors in it that portrayed all of these characters. Thor's actor, of course, who played Opie in Sons of Anarchy. I keep forgetting his name, but that was a phenomenal acting. And of course, Christopher Judge is always phenomenal at playing Kratos himself. So I've got no doubt whatever he produces is going to be fantastic, but I really want to see it. However, all of their major studios have said exactly the same thing, and all of their biggest guys, Neil Druckmann, Cory Barlog, etc., they've all said, we're literally, unlike previous years where we'll show you something way in advance, we are literally not showing you anything until it's ready to show. Like nothing. So, and that's the only thing. Like in previous years, I would have said, yeah, Sony were great at selling you the dream. Now, all of the directors have kind of took a stand and went, nah, no. When I'm ready to show you it, it'll be ready. And we've seen that again from a couple of the Xbox guys. Ray, despite everybody having seen internally what I've forgotten the name of it now. Not Ray, sorry, Playground. With Fable, despite everybody having seen it internally, saying it looks fantastic and it runs really well and it looks beautiful and blah, 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 blah. And Playground have turned around and said, well, you're not showing it off yet. You'll show it off when we can tell you can show it off. So I think there's quite a few of the directors kind of kicking back on that kind of showing our games off too early stuff now, which is a good thing, I think, personally, because I mean, we've even over the last couple of years, we've seen that specifically with 343, where I don't know who approved them showing the game off when they did originally. But clearly it wasn't. And I think that's why the developers and issues like that, some of the developers that CD Projekt Red, etc., developers are kind of pushing back and saying, listen, when the game's ready, it'll be ready and you can show it off. So I think that's a different phase, and why both Microsoft and Sony as well going forward will have a little bit of a different plan on how to attack these showcases. Are these developers ready to show their games, as opposed to and the kind of studio heads, although should we say the
are they willing to show their games? Is what you're saying. Yeah. I also think one point that Luke touched briefly on is definitely something. Last year they really didn't have to have a showcase because there was really not much competition. Nintendo, didn't have a very good year. Xbox
it would have literally been wasted marketing at that point. It would have been wasted marketing. They didn't need to, because there was nobody to market against.
Exactly. So they could only let the game speak.
God of War.
Exactly.
Yeah. Put a few adverts on the telly for God of War. God of War will sell itself, and it did. It was sold extremely well, and there was no competition to go against it. So you were absolutely right, Boxy.
Yeah. So this year it's different. A lot of first-party games from Xbox coming, of course, and also Nintendo is having a killer year with Zelda and Metroid, and so I expect a full showcase this year, probably around the E3 time slot. That's But then,
And saying that as well, you've got with Nintendo, you've got Zelda, Metroid, and already confirmed Pokemon expansions.
yeah,
Now,
right.
that doesn't sound like much,
Mm,
but you know how big Pokemon sells.
yeah.
And Pokemon, this one was one of the highest selling in the franchise history.
Mm,
Which of course people always, because but again with numbers and Nintendo specifically, like it's just taken for granted these days that they're doing like 25, 30, 40 million like without taking a breath. Like whatever they release sells really well regardless. It just sells well. Like they're one of the highest like console to to game buy-ins, cross sells on the market, if not the highest.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
insane.
It is.
No doubt they've got a little bit extra to send across this year as well. I wouldn't be surprised if Nintendo have one game left to kind of add on to that.
I could see one too for the holiday season. Yeah. Or at around the holiday season. So yeah, good stuff. There was, by the way, a bunch of talk about Diablo 4, which of course, again, the beta is gonna come soon.
Let's talk about that. I want to see Luke snap.
No, we need to.
We get him there.
I'm going to open Battle.net while I'm here and get that Ultimate Edition if you don't stop.
I got the super golden duper ultimate edition, and Luke, we getting you there. So there was a lot of talk about Diablo 4. Is it coming to Game Pass this week? Because Rod Ferguson tweeted out the following. It's awesome seeing the excitement around the Diablo 4 beta and our Wolfpack puppy. We've been getting some questions about the 4 on Game Pass, and I want to let you know we have no plans for that. See you in Sanctuary during the beta early access weekend starting March 17th. So the headlines were automatically Diablo 4 not coming to Game Pass and so on. However, what I read into this statement is that without the acquisition, and we're going to talk about the acquisition in a second, but without the acquisition, it's not going to come to Game Pass. He did not say, like many made their articles out to be, that even when they acquire it, Diablo 4 will not come to Game Pass. So what do you guys think? What should we read into this?
To be honest, exactly the same. There is no plans. Now, of course, we know plans change. If things were to change with regards to the acquisition, the good chances are Microsoft will say, okay, these titles, they'll start with historic, like they did with Bethesda. They'll start with historic titles first, and they'll gently roll in all of the titles until all of the current titles are in there. And I think that'll be the same. So even when the acquisition goes through, or if it goes through, of course, let's put the if back in there. If it goes through, I still think it'll be a number of months until it hits Game Pass. It won't be. It'll be probably the beginning of next year, if not kind of a couple of months into next year. But that's not to say it won't go into Game Pass if the acquisition goes through. As it stands, however, if it doesn't go through for some reason, then it won't go to Game Pass. And there's a track record of believing that anyway, because the vast majority of Activision titles haven't come, like Activision Blizzard titles haven't come to Game Pass historically. So there's no reason to think it would do if there wasn't an acquisition of the company.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a pretty obvious statement, I think, and obviously people are going to ask the question now because they're aware of the acquisition. But yeah, it's a pretty straightforward one. We have no plans of that.
Yeah.
Now, should they be acquired? Of course, the discussions will be, let's get these games onto Game Pass. What are the contractual bindings that prevent us from doing this currently, and when do they end? And that is when it'll go in. Just like we've seen with Ghostwire, April 12th, I think it is, 14th, ends and into Game Pass, and then PlayStation Plus.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Agree. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I agree with Dutch. I think it's typical corporate speak for, we can't really say it's going in now because it isn't. Yeah. But that's not to say that it won't if the deal goes through. I think they'd have a pretty good chance if the deal goes through of getting it on pretty quickly because Xbox have the marketing.
Yeah.
So presumably they have that lovely subscription clause that Sony also have in their marketing deals. And they could very internally, very quickly work out how to, get it on there. So we'll see. I think it's disappointing for some people, obviously, because I think a lot of people really wanted the deal to be done by now so that they could look forward to Diablo 4 coming to Game Pass. But, I mean, look, just buy the game anyway, 'cause it's going to be great. So.
And you definitely will get your money's worth because this is a 200-hour plus game. But you bring up a great point. A lot of people hope for that because I've said this so many times. The deal is not for everyone. It most certainly isn't for me. I'm not a Call of Duty player. I will enjoy the campaigns, the 5 hours each year, and that's it. I won't get more out of this. I'm not a Candy Crush player. I'm not a World of Warcraft player. And every 12 to 15 years, we will get a Diablo game, which I'm gonna play but yeah, overall, Bethesda offered for me a lot more. But obviously, taste is different. And but let's talk about this deal because we have a super chat coming in from Drawn TJ who sends in $2. Thank you, man. He says the deal is going to go through. Yeah. So let's talk about this because we have an expert here now in our middle, right there. Because for those who don't know, Luke, you're a mergers and acquisition lawyer, so you have dealt with the CMA on the side of companies, not on the side of the CMA. So, and also, of course, with the EU. So, a lot of things happened this week. On Monday, Brad Smith said that Microsoft will announce a lot more third-party deals in the next weeks, and out of next weeks became a couple of days because then just the day after they announced a 10-year partnership to bring Xbox games to the cloud service Boosteroid, and just the day after that, they also announced a 10-year deal with the firm behind the Switch Cloud games, Ubitus. Honestly, I've never heard of those guys before, but this is the company which powers the cloud games on the Switch, such as Guardians of the Galaxy, Hitman 3, and Control, and Resident Evil Village. So, yeah, that was one thing.
That makes more sense. That makes a lot more sense with potentially how some games might go on to Switch then going forwards if Ubisoft is the one that's helping get cloud games on Switch.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. It could be. So you should think that Xbox announcing left and right 10-year deals with cloud service providers. We also know that they signed a deal with Nvidia on GeForce Now. The FTC lawyers now want to see, of course, more infos on the 10-year deals with Nintendo and Nvidia and the others, because they, and I quote now, said, despite clearly intending to use these agreements in its defense, Microsoft has refused to produce underlying internal documents related to these agreements or communications with third parties other than Nvidia, Nintendo, and Sony. Microsoft should be not permitted to introduce or rely on these agreements without producing the requested underlying discovery. So, before we go into some of the things that happened in the UK this week on the deal, Luke, what do you think? Is this gonna ease the concerns of FTC and, of course, the CMA? They have also announced their concerns. Where do you stand on this?
Yeah, it's a difficult question because the honest answer for anybody who's asked that question as to whether, do you think it will assuage the fears of regulators? The honest answer is who knows. To be honest, it's difficult to judge. But what I will say is that one of the biggest concerns that the CMA had, and actually the concern that was, I think, when I read their provisional findings, was the most worrying for Microsoft, was around cloud gaming, in particular because it's a nascent market. So it's a very early stage sub market, let's call it, of gaming delivery, and competition regulators, particularly the CMA, really, really, really focus on nascent markets because they are markets that can very quickly be gobbled up by a particular competitor and then dominated for years. So I got why it was a concern, albeit I don't necessarily agree with the rationale of the CMA in terms of their findings. So Microsoft's plan, one of the plans is to reach out with these licensing deals to kind of get more input across cloud gaming providers. And I think it's pretty deliberate choice why we haven't heard of these competitors or these players in the market, which is that Microsoft are probably trying to deliberately target very small providers to show that they're willing to kind of drop content on good licensing terms to very small players to enable them to grow, so as not to be seen to be trying to kind of take a stranglehold of cloud gaming. Whether it will work, I think, is another question, because the difficulty is, at least with the CMA, that they really, 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 and I've said this like a million times, they do not like behavioral remedies. They don't like contracts. And they don't like them for a lot of different reasons. They prefer structural remedies, divestiture, etc., because they're cleaner, that you don't have to monitor them. You don't have to be worried about anything like that. They're done. So I'm not sure if they'll work with the CMA in particular. The honest answer is I don't know. And I think even if I was on the Microsoft side as a lawyer, I still wouldn't know, because when you're in this stuff, like when you're doing it and you're making submissions and you're trying to strategize about what you should do, you don't know what the outcome's going to be. You can just, you can do what you think is best for your client in that scenario, and advise as best you can. But we'll see. We don't have that long to wait with the CMA, but and other regulators, the EU, around the same time. But it's going to be difficult. The CMA in their findings said that they didn't think that the circumstances existed in this merger for behavioral remedies, effectively being the sole way that you would navigate through what the CMA thought were concerns. And I don't know how you get more clearer than that if you're the CMA to saying, we don't think contracts are going to be enough. We need something else. But maybe, there's some stuff that's come out today. Maybe they'll change their minds. We don't know. But it's just difficult.
Yeah.
Do you think then the responses from some of the people that had original oppositions to it, and those were the ones that were kind of monitoring, apart from just the market, but for those that are within that market, i.e. the competition, aside from Sony, others,
do
you think them voicing their satisfaction at what they've been provided as fixes to their concerns would have a greater effect on the CMA than the contracts themselves?
Possibly.
If they essentially went back to these people that had the concerns initially, and those same people went, we are now satisfied with what we've been provided. We no longer have a concern.
To some extent, yes, and then to another extent, no. The extent yes is because obviously when the CMA or any competition, not just the CMA, I don't want to make this exclusive to them. They don't like exclusives. Ha ha ha. Looking at the way that the CMA work, and the way that they are supposed to use their powers under relevant legislation is that they have to take into account third-party concerns, right, or lack of concerns in this case. They have a bit of both, but probably I would imagine they have more lack of concern than concern, right? However, the weighting of that in their analysis is really low, whether it's for or against the deal. So they particularly don't take much consideration of competitors in the market, for example, because they know naturally that competitors in the market are going to be diametrically opposed to a merger that involves a primary competitor. It's just the way it is. And likewise, the impact on certain third parties may be different to other third parties. So whilst it is a factor, there's that kind of element where the CMA will not give it as much room to breathe as they might do other considerations. And particularly, the reason it's weighted so lowly is because from the CMA's perspective, and I know this is, not people don't agree with this. I don't agree with the rationale either, what the CMA have put forward here. But their ultimate focus is not on, the competitors in the market, what a third party thinks. They are trying to look at down the line, how will this affect rivalry, and ultimately how will that affect consumers. Now, I know people are then going to say, yeah, but Sony and the CMA, and it doesn't look like they're doing that, and I get that. But the way that they analyze this stuff is by reference to rivalry, which is why they're focusing on the Sony, the PlayStation, Xbox rivalry so much. So I just think it's like the third party stuff. It's important to some extent. They will look at it. It will be a factor, but the weighting is pretty low. Yeah.
Interesting. I got a couple of follow-up questions, but at first I need to catch up on some of the supers that came in. Master Cube sends in 2.79 Canadian dollars and says, "Is the CMA as corrupt as they seem to be?" Honestly, I don't think it's corruption. I think it's just that they, at least that's how it looks to me, Luke. But you can correct me. That they are not familiar with the gaming space, and it is some of their statements and some of the things we've seen just sounds so weird for us gaming enthusiasts. But if you're not familiar with a particular market, I don't know how you would look at it. But I don't think that it's actually corruption. It's more a matter of incompetence, or I don't know how to phrase it better. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, it's not corruption. And I mean this in the nicest way. The CMA don't care about gaming, right? They don't. The issues that are posed in front of the CMA in terms of merger analysis, like they don't care about them as such. They certainly don't care enough to be persuaded one way or another through corrupt means, is what I'm trying to say. And I think I don't even think it's incompetence necessarily, or even a lack of knowledge, because the CMA do tons of research into whatever industry they're looking at. I just think, for whatever reason, the analysis that they've undertaken and the conclusions they've arrived at look odd if you're not in this day to day, right? Like if you don't follow the industry day to day like we do. And to some extent, they're more, I guess, informed than we are. And I'll say why, which is just because they have access to all these behind the scenes documents, financial statements, facts and figures that we do not have access to. But even with that, I don't see, with a lot of what the CMA say is their kind of arguments, I don't see how they've arrived at the conclusions they have from the information they have. And I think that's where the weirdness arises. It's kind of like you look at we're in this all the time. We're enthusiasts, this is a hobby, and we follow this really closely. And so when the CMA or any other regulator starts talking about it, we're very critical of how they talk about it, or we'll kind of look at statements and go, well, that's not, like, I know in my experience that's not right. That's not quite how this works, right? So I think that's the issue. It's not it's not corruption or anything. If it's corruption, then the EU and the FTC are both corrupt as well, and because they arrived effectively at the same conclusions.
I mean, the FTC, we could probably say.
Well, it's not corruption with the FTC as such. It's agenda. That's so like the FTC at least are pretty open about that because they are agenda led. The CMA historically are not agenda led. They're pretty widely regarded as kind of the best competition regulator out there because they focus not on agendas like other regulators do, but on analysis. However, that's not to say you have to agree with the analysis that they come out with in their cases. They're not infallible, right? Like that's a different thing. Yeah. So yeah,
I think the funniest point the CMA and EU have come out with was disregarding Nintendo entirely because they're a fitness app.
Yeah, some.
Like, I still can't wrap my head around that. You're not a console, you're a fitness app. Sorry, what?
Yeah. It's.
Imagine reading that being Nintendo. You're like, sorry, we're a fitness app.
Yes.
News to them, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Tom from Toonami sends in a $5 super chat. Thank you, man. He says, Luke, what's your opinion on what Michael Pachter said Microsoft would most likely if the CMA block? Basically saying Microsoft would just set up a third party in the UK. Yeah.
If they divested Activision business, they would set up a PLC to put that under, which would essentially negate the divestiture.
Yeah, it wouldn't work though.
Yep. I know.
Yeah, I listened to the Pachter interview, and I like to give some context to Pachter. He is actually by trade a lawyer, so he was a tax lawyer for 15 years. Years and years ago now, like 20, 25 years ago plus, right? So I don't want to diminish. Like, I'm not saying, well, he's not a lawyer, so he doesn't know what he's talking about, because that's just nonsense. However, in this instance, he does not know what he's talking about at all. And that interview was... The solutions that he proposed are laughable. Like, they're just nonsense. They're total nonsense. His view on other stuff, like whether you agree with Pachter or not, and I think as a gaming community, we're all pretty much agreed he usually speaks complete nonsense, right? Like, that's generally what Pachter does. But so I think if keep the same energy if you disagree with him 90% of the time, but then on this thing you're like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. It just doesn't work. I've done some posts on Twitter about why it doesn't work, but the long and short of it is you can't make say Microsoft make a subsidiary in the UK, right? And that subsidiary has a board. And it deals in the UK market with Call of Duty, however that would work. I don't even know how that would work, but let's just go with it. It's not independent. That's not divestiture. The company, the directors of that company have a duty to their shareholders, to the company as a whole. Who are the shareholders? It's some other entity up there, and right up the top, it's Microsoft. So it's, it just doesn't work. It's not, there's no independence there. It's still a company that belongs to Microsoft and that is in the interest of Microsoft. So the CMA would look at that and go, right, what the CMA mean by divestiture is true third party divestiture. Yeah. It's Microsoft selling Activision to Tencent. That's what they mean. I'm not saying that that's what they want, but that's an example. Yeah. So yeah. Also, just a nitpick, but Pachter's talking about PLCs. They're publicly limited companies, publicly listed companies. You're not owned by a single shareholder in the way that Pachter says. It's just a nitpick. But anyway, just ignore Pachter on his legal points on those elements.
I would say specifically for that, because I've dealt with a number of businesses that try to avoid, especially if they've got horrific credit, and they want to set up another business in order to avoid debt, essentially. Now, again, and this is the same thing with trying to set up another business in order to avoid divestiture. If you're trying to avoid anything, any UK business through Companies House, etc., it all lists back to the same directors. So no matter what you do, if you're in any way affiliated with the lead business, it automatically goes bink, and there's your debt.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
Bink, and that's who you're owned by. Bink, that's who you're owned by. Like, if you're affiliated in any way, shape, or form with that lead business, it is not Divesture. It is not a separate entity. You are
Exactly.
part of one.
Yeah. Like I mean, that's exactly right. And like, I think people think what Microsoft looks like is this: Microsoft, like holdings, and then here's Activision or here's another company, right? Microsoft does not look like that at all. Any corporate structure like that is gigantic. It is like a spider web of different entities that are owned by other intragroup entities that are partially owned by another intragroup entity and that go all around the place. And I think people think, well, if you get like this entity way down here, down the chain, and you put it in the UK, like Pact is saying, well, that's just as good as if it was just on its own. It's not, because it belongs to the same corporate group. So it's still owned ultimately way up the chain, up you go. It's still owned by Microsoft. It's no different to the Activision Blizzard merging into this Microsoft sub now. It's just that would be over here, and this proposed amazing independent company would be a sister company like here, right? So it just don't pay Pact any attention with it, because it's just nonsense.
So Siki brings up a great question in the chat. If the CMA blocks it, what can Microsoft do? Can they just not sell Call of Duty in the UK, or what are their options?
Well, I mean, there's different things that happen. I think if we get to a point where the CMA is saying, like, all of the remedies you've proposed are not good enough, and Microsoft go, well, we're not proposing, like, we don't have anything else to propose because we're not going to divest, which is absolutely the position of Microsoft. They are not going to divest, no matter what. If it gets to that point, then there's a couple of things that can happen. One is that on the terms of the merger agreement between Activision and Microsoft, the deal fails, basically, because regulatory approval is a condition. It's called a condition precedent to the deal actually completing. So on that basis, it's done. Like, you can't do anything other than that. Obviously, I've spoken before about the appeals process in the UK, and I won't harp on about it here, but it's quite a difficult one. I absolutely think that Microsoft would pursue it. I don't think they would just give up. They've got the money and the inclination and the time to pursue that and to try and go through it. It's very difficult in the UK, but they would do it. They won't drop out of the UK market because the thing that, like, ignoring the contractual stuff that I've just spoken about and ignoring the appeals process, if you go against the CMA, if you ignore an order of the CMA, this applies to other regulators as well, but let's talk specifically about the CMA, they have a really strong power to fine under the Enterprise Act, which is the law that regulates CMA and competition in the UK. And that's, from memory, that's something like up to 1% of worldwide revenue. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, like 1%. That's a lot of money. That's a huge amount of money for Microsoft to just have, because they wanted to try and continue, with the deal, try and complete the deal, try and continue on in the UK. And so they wouldn't just ignore the verdicts of the CMA. They would comply. I'm full, like 100% they comply with it. They wouldn't pull out of the UK because it's not good business to do that anyway. Going back to the point about, Microsoft have to, directors of Microsoft companies have to act in the best interests of the company as a whole, their shareholders. You're not going to pull out of, one of the biggest Western markets where I imagine they get a ton of money on the basis of some fit about a deal over here. Like, it just wouldn't happen. Your directors would be breaching all kinds of obligations and duties that they have to try and suggest that. So they're in a bit of a tough spot, really. I can see the route that I can see them going, if it got to that point, is the appeals process. They would just see it out until the end, basically, no matter what. They would do what they could. But it's difficult. Like, it's not an easy. it's not an easy process for them.
Yeah, I can imagine. The Fifth Horseman asks in chat, what if a company is formed by another party and the games are licensed to them by Acti under a very specific term, and Acti effectively just pulls out of the UK? Would that be an option?
Probably not. It's still quite difficult there because, first of all, I mean, I don't know how the Call of Duty licensing works. But presuming it's like many other license agreements, the issue is that something the CMA are going to go for? No, probably not, because it's still a contractual remedy. All right, you've undertaken some kind of restructure, but I don't, the remedy doesn't quite get there. It gets you there maybe a bit more than a standard contractual remedy would, like a standard behavioral remedy, like the type of thing Microsoft are proposing at the moment with these 10-year deals. It's a bit more beyond that, but it wouldn't. It's kind of divest your or bust with the CMA, at least in terms of when you start proposing that angle. Not to say they might not consider some of the behavioral remedies. I just mean that would be something. I think if they're really set on divestiture, they just wouldn't go for it. I could be wrong. Who knows? But
yeah. Good. Great insight.
It sounds like at the moment as well that the CMA are very much. It sounds like they're more the outlier. The EU, the kind of rumblings from that side seem to be like they're more happy at the moment, and it's likely to go through with the remedies provided. FTC are a bit of a mess internally at the moment, so God knows what's happening there. But the CMA has always been the outlier.
The FTC can't block it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
The FTC. Yeah.
They have to go to court.
But they have to go to court, and at the moment they don't have the money. So
yeah, they lost so many law cases, lawsuits. Yeah, so
it's also just a lot easier to go against the FTC, right? To kind of undermine what they want to do because they don't have that authority to actually block on their own merits. They have to go through a process.
Yeah.
But yeah, the EU seem, the Reuters rumblings are that they'll accept it with behavioral remedies and they'll be enough, which is, a big win for Microsoft. Is so the only thing I guess we don't know is what behavioral remedies do the EU want? Are they happy with the ones that are being proposed? The ones that Microsoft are touting around at the moment, or do they want something greater? I think if it's a contractual remedy, absent something ridiculous, I think Microsoft will give it. Like, I don't think that they care at this point. They'll be happy to do it. So that just leaves really the CMA. The CMA are absolute. I said this right at the start. Basically, the most pivotal regulator in terms of any of these big acquisitions, because they have the power and ability to just stop deals dead.
So today they posted something that was like at least the first positive sign I've seen from their side. They posted 6 studios responses to the Microsoft Activision deal, and
7 in total, and one of them was Sony. They're the only one that said no.
Yeah, well, I said 6 positive. Dutch, you gotta list 6 positive. And they all said it should go ahead. And none of their responses said it should be blocked. So for them posting these kind of statements, do you see that as a positive indication? That's how it came across to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's it's positive in the sense of, you've got market participants saying that actually we don't have any problem with this, or even better, we think it will have a net positive impact on the industry. So that's good. It's not, I don't think it demonstrates which way the CMA are leaning or anything like that. It's not like an indication of how the CMA are feeling, because they have to publish this as part of their obligations under the law. So they will take a sample of market participant. I mean, maybe that's all they got, right? Maybe those were the only market participant responses they got, but they'll take a sample anyway and they'll put it out there. And sometimes, obviously, those samples can be skewed one way or another, as in they might, be just generally favourable or not. So I think it is positive that they're favourable. I did read all of these today actually on my lunch. Some of them were really, really strange. Like they were, some of them were quite formally written. Obviously heavily redacted. I remember one signed off with "That's my 2 cents." Anyway, that was from a market participant. So probably like a little indie dev or something like that. So I thought it was quite interesting actually, but some typos here and there as well. Proofread your stuff, man. I mean,
I kind of think I know which one that was from, to be honest, and I think we all know him as well.
Okay.
It's very much like Mike Rose. That very much, because he had the same gripes that he came across months ago, and he's aired publicly about Sony's indie visibility.
That's very true. Yeah, maybe it was. Maybe it was. So I mean, it's positive. Also, they had responses to provisional findings from Microsoft and Sony as well in there, as well as the market participant responses. And I had to read through those as well just before I came on here, actually. They were, as always, very illuminating. I actually think it was. I normally don't make value judgments about some of this stuff. Like I never sit here and go, "Oh yeah, Microsoft's arguments are really great and Sony's are trash," or vice versa. But Microsoft's response today was the first time I've been like, "This is a really good response to a lot of the CMA's points," and that's not to say I think that will influence the CMA, but it was the first time I read it and I was like, actually, some of this stuff is kind of weird, and the basis on which the CMA are analyzing this is kind of strange. So the Microsoft stuff was actually very impressive. I thought it was like a good counter to what the CMA was saying. The Sony one, of course, was 20 pages of Sony going, "Well done, good stuff, CMA, really great, we totally agree," which is not surprising at all. But yeah.
I read the Microsoft response today as well. Had a similar view. I thought very obvious laid out arguments on their side.
Yeah.
So listen, I got a question. Now, mid-April, you already teased that we will get the findings of the CMA, and we will get the findings of the EU. Is it gonna be over, or will they once more delay their deadlines, or will it go in the next phase or round? And what do you think? Is it really gonna be over mid-end of April?
Well,
one way or the other, yeah.
With the CMA, one way or another, their analytical process will be over.
Okay.
Because the end of April is the end of their extended deadline to deliver a final report. So that's it then. Whatever the CMA say in that report will then influence what happens next completely. Because either they will say, "You know what, we've read all your submissions, we've seen the stuff you've offered, Microsoft, and we'd be happy with these contractual remedies. We'll outline them here." And around the same time, you would probably have an announcement from Microsoft that they'd reached a deal with the CMA in terms of providing the sufficient remedies for the CMA. Or they will say, "Don't like any of that, we want divestiture or some other structural remedy," and Microsoft will say no. And then a whole new phase will begin, I'm sure, where the Microsoft try and bring it to the Competition Appeals Tribunal, and then we'll go around the houses again for a while. I think that is also the same for the EU. So their final report, it will be the end of April. You get the EU's report. I think it's the day after the CMA,
the day
actually.
after.
And that's it for the EU as well. So I think by the end of April, beginning of May, you'll know exactly where it's going, right? The FTC stuff by then might be irrelevant if the CMA are trying to block, etc.
Yeah.
Or, we'll get the EU and the CMA saying, oh, yeah, actually, we're happy with it. We're happy with the remedies. And then the FTC are in an even more difficult position than they are now, because they've got to be like, okay, do we really want to battle this now? So,
yeah, Microsoft already said that they are going to move forward if the EU and the CMA will approve, regardless of the FTC's finding, because they have the confidence that they will stand their case in court. So, yeah. Okay, so it's at least we would know where we stand. It's not gonna be like, oh, okay, we need another 2 months or 3 months or whatever.
No more delays.
No more delays. So it's either approved or blocked, and in case it's blocked, they gonna have to get Do they have the chance to fight the CMA on this in court? Does Microsoft get that?
So you can you can go to court. Well, it's not court, but you can go to something called the Competition Appeals Tribunal in the UK, which is a separate regulatory entity which has oversight on the CMA's decisions. You have to get standing and appeal to go there, but you're nearly always granted it because it's only fair that you do. The difficulty is that if you go there, you can only there's something that's called a judicial review standard that applies to cases that you bring to the Competition Appeals Tribunal, which is effectively you have to prove one of three things about what the CMA have done. So either you have to say that they've acted illegally, that they've acted irrationally, or that they've had some procedural unfairness, procedural impropriety, something like that.
Okay. So you can't really fight the outcome, but you can fight the way how they
exactly
came to their conclusion. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think the only thing we could probably look at them in this case would be from an irrational standpoint on terms of the findings.
I was thinking, I thought that earlier when I was reading the Microsoft stuff. There are some things in there about, for example, the way that the CMA have calculated certain percentages of PlayStation users, for example, that would leave the platform to go to Xbox that seem to have been misjudged. That's what Microsoft is saying anyway. Obviously, we don't have the other side from the CMA, so that we can only see what Microsoft is saying. I think that's the most likely in terms of irrationality. But the problem with irrationality, I guess, from a review standard, is the bar is so high. Like, you really have to prove that no other regulator effectively would act like the CMA. And that's going to be really difficult for Microsoft, because you can see that the EU and the FTC have acted in a similar manner, as in that they've come to substantively the same conclusions, albeit they might be willing to accept, FTC not, but the EU are willing to accept different remedies. So I think that would be almost impossible. Not impossible, but close to it. I think the better one would be something like procedural unfairness, to say that, the methodology that the CMA have used has been skewed too far in favor of, perhaps skewed too far in kind of a direction that lends itself to negative outcomes in terms of analysis. And that's something that the Microsoft tried to pick up in their response today. Again, it's pretty difficult, but it's easier than the irrationality one. Illegality, they wouldn't even challenge under it, because there's nothing that the CMA have done that's illegal. But yeah, that's basically where you can go. But yeah, Boxenberg, you're right in that the Competition Appeals Tribunal can't review, they can't analyze the case like the CMA have done, and they can't analyze the CMA's analysis. That's not what they do. They say, because the deference is always to the CMA, they're the experts, they're the ones who have the information. It's always, okay, have they done something wrong in this process that may have manipulated what the outcome was?
Yeah.
And if they have, they go, okay, CMA, it goes back to you now. You correct the error you've made, and then come to your conclusion again. Now, what happens a lot of the time is that happens, and the CMA go, "Yep, we've looked at it, we've corrected it. Outcome's the same," and then the tribunal go, "Okay, cool."
Okay.
So it's a bit difficult, but that's basically the process.
Yeah, got it. So, I know people in the chat want to know where do you stand? Is it gonna go through? Will we have like a positive outcome on this? Tentatively.
Oh yeah, I mean, if anybody says that it is going to go through or that it isn't going to go through, don't listen to them, because they don't know. Nobody knows, right? So you can only give your best judgment about it based on what you've seen. I think I'm a bit more positive having read this stuff today, particularly Microsoft response, particularly picking holes in some of the CMA's kind of qualitative analysis, because I think the CMA may have legitimately made some errors, potentially, that have caused kind of their analysis to become skewed in not an unfair way, but in a way that doesn't reflect what might happen. So I am more positive on it. I wouldn't say I'm sort of in the percentage threshold that's in favor, that's, thinks it will happen. I'm still kind of below 50%. But a lot of that is driven by the CMA, because if the CMA weren't a factor, I'd be 80, 90% confident that this would happen. But they are. They're like the most important factor. So yeah, the honest answer is I don't know. And anybody who tells you that is lying, because unless they work for the CMA, of course, because they don't know. But yeah, I'm probably about 40% at the moment, but that's better than I was about 2 months ago, which was about 10. So
okay. So the optimism is going up. So
it's going up.
It's going up. Okay, good.
I want it to happen. I don't know.
I just want it to be done, honestly. Again,
I just want it to be over, man. Yeah.
For me personally, again, I don't have a big benefit out of this deal, and I just see what Microsoft could have done in the same time with that money if they would just go out and get other partners and whatnot. That would benefit me personally more. So, am I super excited about this? I want it to be over. And yeah, I know that they see the opportunity in growing in mobile, which is not going to excite me personally. But the good thing is, if this is a success for them and a big business case for them, the gaming division within Microsoft gains in importance, and that makes other investments that might excite me a little bit more easier. So, but Dutch, where do you stand? What do you think? Tentatively.
See, I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm as low as 40%. But I do agree. I'm still in the camp very much so that at this point, I think EU and FCC aren't a concern. The CMA, however, are the wild card and always have been the wild card, I think, from the start. I don't know which way they'll go. There's been cases in the past where they've been really upfront and super negative about deals that they've worked on or mergers that they've worked on, and ended up completely with the opposite conclusion at the end, and ended up passing the deals. And vice versa. There's been some where they haven't really found many negatives to draw from and then blocked the deals. So it could go either way, and it's really hard to kind of predict which way they'll go. However, you can be rest assured that Microsoft will take it to CAT if needs be, regardless of what the outcome is as well. Obviously, if the outcome's negative, they will definitely take it to CAT, and they'll go down that route. And I think, like Luke was mentioning there, they do have, as it's based on kind of their provisional findings this time around, they have found some flaws in some of their arguments, where some things have been calculated incorrectly or unfairly, such as I think it was the total earnings of Call of Duty on over 5 years versus how much of a loss it would be over 1 year to PlayStation, which they said doesn't make any sense. You can't compare 5 years versus 1 year. If you're going to do comparisons, then it's 5 versus 5 or 1 versus 1. Like, that doesn't make qualitative or quantitative sense to do so. So, yeah, if they're going to go down a route, then of course that would be the route to do so. But of course, they're pointing it out prior to that. So, if they make these corrections prior to it, does it affect the final decision? We'll find out. If they make continued contracts with some of the larger cloud streaming platforms, such as Amazon, etc., that might further help mitigate it. We don't know. I'd probably say I'm probably around 70% at the moment. Only because, and that's took a hit. I think, again, previously, months and months ago, I would have probably said, yeah, I'm closer to kind of 80, 90% that it'll go through. I don't see why. But now I've seen some of the analysis on it and their thinking, whether obviously we know the market kind of to a different extent than the CMA do, from a consumer standpoint, and that's what they're not looking at, in my opinion. They're looking at it purely from a business standpoint, not from consumer. From a consumer standpoint, I can't see where their arguments are valid, and some of the things that they've said and kind of come to have been very strange. But again, we're not looking at it from their perspective. So whatever I think matters not. But I think 70-30 at the minute.
Okay, that's fair.
That's a minor increase, and that's only based on today. I think it was probably maybe around the 60% before today.
Yeah. So myself, I'm probably in the same ballpark like you, Dutch. 60, 70, somewhere in that range, because from a consumer perspective, and at the end, I still have the hope that the regulators look at this. How does it affect the market and the consumers? It's a positive. The market is getting stronger competition in the console space, as well as on PC, which is good for consumers. Price-wise, the value that consumers can have access then with Call of Duty for in a subscription service is fantastic. So I still have the feeling that it might go through, but of course no one knows. We've seen ridiculous arguments like the fitness app thing. So if they bring up those kind of arguments, who knows whether rationality will win. But yeah, we will find out. I'm glad to hear that Luke is at least confident that we will get a decision one way or the other in about a month. So that's a good thing. And Tronty J sends in $5. Thank you, man. He says, the deal should go through because one reason is the workers too. They are both American companies, and Microsoft is going to make it pro-consumer. And I would add personally here, workers. Yeah, I've seen some unions. What are they called in the US? CWA or something very similar, like the CMA. So I think it was CWA. Sending out the recommendation letters. And we've seen a lot of staff from ABK speak also out about them being excited that they might be under the umbrella of Microsoft, which would greatly improve their work conditions. Is this something that is going to factor in the UK?
Sadly not, no. So yeah, I think if you look at the FTC and you look back to last year, I think Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and a couple of others were kind of lobbying pretty hard for the FTC to start considering, when they were making merger assessments, the impact on workers, because it's a relevant impact as to what will happen. But in the FTC can't do that under the Sherman Act, as I understand it, at the minute. And nor can the CMA. The CMA's pure kind of legislative remit of consideration is what impact it has on consumers. So they can't look at what impact would it have on workers. Would that or at least a part of what competition regulators consider, because obviously, you know, these deals don't just have impact on consumers, they have impact on human capital, you know, on people acting in these organizations. So I think it should be something they consider, but in the UK at least they would have to change legislation to do that.
Yeah.
I would say not only that, but as it stands anyway, and as much as people think it's relevant, yes, the workers' rights would be relevant in the EU or the US, but I don't believe Activision Blizzard have any studios or any workers within the UK as it stands.
I think they've got some administrative operations, like kind of corporate workforce, you know, like tax, legal, and that stuff.
Right.
I don't think they have developers. Yeah.
Not in terms of developers, etc.
Not in terms of not unless I'm wrong about that. I don't think they have any developers here.
Which is why I think that's another factor as to, even if it did come down to that, it wouldn't really be a consideration. There's not enough of a workforce in the UK for them to have concerns over that. In the EU and the US, yes, because they've got thousands within the EU and US. But as you mentioned there, it's more administrative, so it's maybe 100 or so, a couple hundred at most, as opposed to tens of thousands where it is worldwide.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would be much more of a concern over there, which makes more sense, which is why you've seen the workers' union in the US and the EU come forward and say we think this would be a massive positive for the livelihoods of these workers.
Indeed.
But the UK, we've had no such thing. So
yeah, I
wouldn't
agree.
make any difference.
I agree there. So yeah, good talk here. We are almost 2 hours into the show, guys, and we have still one major topic actually left, at least one major topic. So I would close the ABK discussion right here. Yeah, like I said, in a good month we will know the outcome, and then Luke, once it's really done, we will still have you back here to chat whatever is then the major topic. So yeah, another thing that happened this week that I wanted to talk about with you guys is Tom Henderson, who is well-known insider, runs the website Insider Gaming, posted something that he revealed that a big PlayStation 5 hardware revision is currently in the works. It will be released sometime late 2024, so end of next year. And according to the source of his, the rumored system is a revision supporting is not the rumored system supporting the detachable disk drive that we've been hearing for a while now. It is proper new hardware like the mid-gen refresh console, so a PS5 Pro. That also leads, of course, to his assumption that Microsoft has also something in the works. I don't know what they will call it. The Series XL is what I called it in the thumbnail. Yeah, mid-gen refresh consoles. We are now almost 2.5 years into this generation. If we take the blueprint from last gen, we would expect the PS5 Pro end of this year, actually. It came out 3 years after the PS4 came out. We got the PS4 Pro, and 4 years after launch of the Xbox One, we got the Xbox One X. So sources saying now end of next year, at least on the PS5 side of things. And I would assume that Microsoft has an answer to it. So, Luke, let's hear your thoughts. Do you think this could make sense? And do you want such a mid-gen refresh?
Ooh, I don't know how to take this news. Do I want a refresh? I guess yes, because I'll never turn down like more advanced console hardware. Like I just love tech. So like if there's a PS5 Pro and an Xbox Series XL, then I'll get them, because I'd really love that. So, but like, is there a need for them? Like I can't see it at all. I mean, the point of the last, the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X was to basically bring the generation into the Ultra HD era. That was the whole purpose of those consoles.
Yeah.
And that made total sense because that's where we were going, kind of higher fidelity, high resolution gaming. And they did that pretty well. I mean, the PS4 Pro, it was okay. The One X was a great piece of hardware. And this time, like, we're getting to a point almost. I mean, there's two things, isn't there? Because we've not even anywhere near scratched what these current consoles can do. Like, there's only a couple of games this generation that are really kind of pushing hardware, I think, and because of COVID and all the delays and the cross-gen stuff, like we're not even near to these consoles being fully exploited. Now, I know there's been kind of recent problems with third-party games and stuff and performance issues and all that sort of stuff, but I don't necessarily think that's a hardware issue. That's just a dev issue, right? That's just a problem that some devs are having, and probably some of that is due to COVID as well, like the lingering after effects of all that. So, and I kind of I don't know what these would offer. I mean, obviously they could offer a GPU bump, probably a memory bump, probably the CPU bump as well in terms of frequency. Maybe they could introduce some kind of even more bespoke hardware ray tracing stuff. But I don't think, like, what's the impact of that? It's just kind of like better performing, better looking games. I don't think, like, the justification isn't there for me like it was with the last gen, where I mean, these were really, let's be honest, they were crap systems, right? Like they were really poor.
Even when they launched,
Even when they launched, they were outdated. Now we got, the systems we have now launching with modern architectures, powerful, with hardware accelerated ray tracing features, like, SSDs, everything that we wanted. So I don't really see the need for it. I'll never refuse it because I'm always, a big fan of new hardware, but I don't see it. Like, I don't see what the motivation is. I don't really understand. If we were 5 years in and, they were struggling and we just weren't seeing improvements, I'd say, well, maybe, but we've not really got there yet, have we? Like, unless I'm wrong, I'm wrong about it. I don't think we got there, so it's weird.
You're definitely right on the thing that we have not seen any games really taking advantage of what the consoles have to offer on both machines, on the PS5 and Xbox Series X. We are still waiting for that next gen showcase. Like people talk about, of course, probably Hellblade is going to be that game. Yeah, that really pushes the limit. Or, of course, on the PlayStation side of things, whatever Naughty Dog is going to work on is going to look absolutely mind-blowing. And no doubt about that. But yeah, I've seen that argument many times. I'll give my spiel on this in a second, but let us hear your thoughts first.
I'm on exactly the same as Luke. Like, I'll never say no to advanced hardware. However, we don't need it.
Hmm.
Like the generation's already had a pushback of a year, if not 2 years, in terms of the games that were meant to be releasing earlier on. We still are in a position where games are cross-generational. Only
Yeah.
this year do we start to see games come out specifically for this gen and no other. And even then, third party are still creating games as cross-generational. So we're nowhere near the point at which any of these consoles have been pushed to what they can actually do. So even next year for the PlayStation 5 Pro or whatever it's called, I think is too early. Far too early. I think it needs another year at least, if not 2 years, until we see the PlayStation 5 Pro. Mainly
Hmm.
because we haven't seen, and because of the way the market has been, because of the international circumstances in terms of the recession and pandemic, etc., which has kind of had a knock-on effect on everything. There isn't a financial benefit to releasing new hardware so soon. It doesn't really take advantage of any situations, and we're already in the position where PlayStation have released 3 SKUs in the last 2 years. They released the original SKU, a revised SKU, and then a secondary revised SKU, and each one of those have revised the internals on the PlayStation for heat purposes, to save on cost reductions, reduce chip sizes, etc., reduce motherboard size, in order to make it more cost effective to sell the console. But then they've also increased the price on that console. Now, when we saw the revised consoles released last time, the consoles were at a point where they would already came down in price, which means releasing the Pro versions, they were then retailing at the original cost of the base models, whereas then the original models would come down in price. At this point, we aren't seeing any reduction on cost on either console. We have seen increase in costs in both consoles, which would lead me to believe that any new consoles next year would be higher priced
Yeah.
than the current gen, not the same and not lower. I can't foresee any reduction in price on either console at the moment due to the recession, due to the world financial kind of issues. So it doesn't make sense for a number of factors. So overall, yeah, of course, I'd get one because we all love more advanced technology, but no developer has done anything to justify having that extra power as yet because they haven't used it. So,
Hmm.
so yeah, that's where I stand.
Okay, interesting. I'm not sure. I think I have a little bit of different view on this, honestly. Of course, you can raise the question: do we really need them? Uh, like Luke said, last gen it was obvious. The reason was more obvious why we needed them, because 4K screens were on the horizon. But when I look at this, I look historically at the other generations that didn't have mid-gen refresh. Let's look at the PS3 and Xbox 360 generation. That generation went simply far too long. Yeah. At the end, we were playing games like Skyrim at 20 FPS. On the PS3, we played them at 5 PS at some point in some areas. Yeah. The console hardware is not super high-end hardware. For the price point, you get a lot, yes, but at the end, technology moves on faster, a lot faster than the traditional 7-8 year console cycle. In almost no other tech area, we keep our devices for 8 years. Can you imagine keeping your phone for 8 years? Can you? Yeah. In this day and age, you don't even keep your TV for 8 years. So technology just moves on. And when we already look at where we are in the PC space at this point in time, and next year we will get the 5 1000 series from Nvidia. Yeah, Luke, I know you will be probably upgrading that to the 590.
Of course.
And then a 590 is competing against a PS5 or an Xbox Series X. Yeah, we are not console technology. I don't see that it lasts for 7-8 years. So that's the one thing. And the other argument I hear a lot is they haven't even used what's in the consoles yet. Well, have they really used what's in a 3090 or a 30? I have a 3080. Yeah. You could also argue that not a lot of games actually use everything that is in there. And why is that? All games are always built as scalable games. And I know people always bring up the argument of cross-gen. But the point is, usually you should look at the lowest common denominators. And all these games are developed for PC anyway. So the lowest common denominator is always the minimum specs on PC. It's not what the console is. And that's what's holding your stuff back. So you can't really use tech. You can't really make an advantage outside of a little bit faster loading times of your SSD anyway, as long as you don't require an SSD in your PC game, so that you can fundamentally change your game design. And that goes along for all these technologies. I've said this before, Dutch. You remember that discussion a couple of weeks ago. You can bring up the same arguments for, I don't know, mesh shaders and stuff like that. So, yeah, do we really need it? Yes and no. That's why they're usually optional.
I still think like, my main point about it. I was going to say my main thing about it has been I still think consoles are restricted by the fact that they are APUs and not CPU, also, GPU driven.
That is a fantastic point. Yeah. The APU thing is definitely something. I don't know whether that will change in the console space. But my point is...
It's the only way to keep the cost down with an APU, that's the issue.
Yeah.
It's the only way to keep cost down.
And the form factor, unless you want PC-sized boxes.
I was going to say that, though, because they've managed to put an awful lot of beef into very super slim gaming laptops these days.
Yeah.
So in terms
True.
That's so true. My point is, though, when people say, "Oh, they haven't used what's really in the box as of yet," my question really is, will they ever? It's different in this day and age. When we look back at the generation of a Super Nintendo or even like N64, PS1 generations, games were made specifically for that one platform. Developers developed a game, a Super Mario for that particular platform, and they squeezed everything out it had. The same happened on the PlayStation, yeah. And then we moved over to the almost all these games that we play in this day and age are not built for one particular platform. They are built to scale. So developers obviously have less time to optimize for one specific hardware configuration. And that's what it comes down to. A console is just one of the thousands of possible hardware configurations they have to optimize for. Granted, it's a hardware configuration that a lot of people have in their homes. So they definitely spend a certain amount of time there, but in general they design their game around scalability. So the question really is, will we ever see a game that makes use of all these tools and features we've heard for during the launch period? I don't know. Honestly, I'm not sure anymore. And if I just look at the PC space where we are now in terms, for instance, on the NVIDIA side of things with the Tensor cores and what AI can do, I see a lot of potential right there. Yeah, AMD is also moving in that direction. AI supported GPU cores. They are also moving in the AI space with FSR 3.0. It's going to be AI based. So that's one thing, for instance, you could do. We've also seen, even though we have good CPUs in there, we know that a lot of potential is there. So I do get the argument. Yeah, what's the point? We don't have like a jump from full HD to 4K. Yes, we do not have that, but we have an overall like technology jump. And yeah, next year is the year of RDNA 3. RDNA 4 GPUs. Yeah, that's gonna come out in 24. In 24, we will have RDNA 4 GPUs. So, yeah, I think it would make sense as long as they are optional. I mean, I don't see the harm. And as you guys said, I also love me some new tech. So yeah, I do hope that the rumors are true. I do hope so.
Yeah, I think on that point as well, the only time I've noticed where the previous gen has required now to be dropped was personally when I was playing the Horizon Forbidden West on PS4 Pro, and that had a significant amount of issues and slow down and pop in and texture issues and performance issues on the PS4 Pro, where I got to the point where I was like, well, this is really pushing what they can do on these platforms now. Like, this is the end of this platform. There is no further headroom for this to be as good as it
continue.
Can be. Yeah. Of course, God of War Ragnarok was an exception because God of War ran like an absolute dream, but that has also been the case with the previous God of War. Like, that was just optimized to run perfectly, whereas Horizon wasn't. And there was a number of games, including The Last of Us, where it was literally The Last of Us 2 really struggling on the PS4 Pro, to the point where it was like a jet.
You know what happened? And it has nothing to do, but it was a funny coincidence. My PS4 Pro died the moment I booted up the Last of Us. So it literally broke it. And
it was like, nope, I don't know.
So for that particular, and since we already had the PS5 on the horizon, I just got a used base PS4 for the last 2 games of the generation and the last couple of months of the generation to play Last of Us and Ghost of Tsushima. So I had to play those on the base machine. Yeah.
But so that's the only thing is that's and that goes to show how far these consoles have been pushed, where only in the next generation are the other ones starting to become invalid, to the point where it's affecting performance, and not in terms of just playability, but in terms of anything that's actually appearing on screen being affected as well, in terms of LODs and things like that. So yeah, and because that shows how far that's come. But again, we've had this conversation multiple times, Boxy. We agree that there needs to be a different kind of change in consoles going forwards. I don't believe iterative changes is going to solve the long-term option for consoles. I don't think releasing them every 7 years is also a viable option anymore, because I think technology, unlike previous years, in 2 decades, we've come so far when it comes to console gaming. But I don't think with the speed of advancements these days, 7-year generations are going to have to be reduced significantly. You're going to have to look at halving that now. 3.5, 5, maybe 4 years at a push for a gen, to keep up with the advancements of technology that's currently on PC. As you mentioned there, we've got RDNA 4 DLSS 3 on PC. And as Luke knows, because Luke's got access to that on this exclusivity agreement with the DS, with the 4090 cards. And the 40 series cards have this DLSS exclusivity. God damn it. These things now, it's made my 30 series invalid already.
It's so good as well.
But it's great, those types of advancements that kind of point towards the fact that the console lifespan has to be shorter these days. Going forward, and of course, not to say these have been used to the extent that they can be yet, but of course, you have the arguments that the PC specs for games are still very low in terms of their lowest spec, and that's what you base it off. When the lowest spec on PC is starting to increase to that of the 2080 Ti as a minimum baseline, with SSDs as a minimum baseline, and then they start to push up to a 30 series, and that's when you know the generations are pushing forward and things are becoming invalid. Outside of that, unfortunately, we're still seeing games releasing on like GTX 9070s and 1080s, and you're like, how God, these have been out years, like like almost like a decade. These cards.
It's not even the 1080s that are the minimum specs. It's like usually the 1060s or something.
Yeah. So until those move, then I completely understand. There's obviously the lowest common denominator is always going to be PC, and it kind of drives it forwards. But it's also a different market entirely, of course, because console consumers, as we all know, and which was the whole purpose in the first place, was to have gaming in the like we're kind of just like gamers that want to have the performance of a PC in the form factor of a console, but connect it to PC anyway. So we're kind of the odd ones out, but the vast majority of the market, I don't know. That's what you have to kind of justify. Not us hardcores. It's mainly, is it justifiable to the rest of the market who haven't really had these consoles long enough to justify it, or people who haven't yet got the base versions of these consoles due to financial issues over these last couple of years with pandemic and things like that. So I think it's ultimately it's down to both companies to weigh up everything, not just the technology's been pushed forward, but from a kind of a world economic standpoint, is this the right time to do this, or should we wait at least a year more and see if things balance out?
See, that's an interesting question, but I don't think that they really have a choice, because these consoles are already very well and deep in development. So it's not like you just, okay, come on, we move it another year and then we get like this and that better technology in there. So you can't really push them out too much, because then again you will launch an outdated console. Because
I was going to say, you're saying that, but Xbox intentionally delayed the Series X to wait for certain technology.
Yeah, but they made that decision years in advance. That's my point. They can't react to certain market things that are happening. At least not, of course, a couple of months always possible, but you know what I mean. Great chat, guys. Great chat. So before we close the show, we definitely need to come to some of the community questions. Luke, I hope you have a couple of more minutes.
Yeah, sure.
So sweet, because at the very end of our show, we always come to the community questions, where people can write in questions, even if they are not listening or watching us live here. Usually on Wednesday, you can post it either on our Discord server or, of course, on YouTube or Twitter, and get your questions and topics in. And this week we have a couple of cool ones. The first is coming from Siki, and I think it's a perfect segue from what we just talked about. He talked about, he says the following: thinking of building a gaming PC. Already bought a combo of a Ryzen 77X, Mobo, 32 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM, and thinking of going with the Radeon 7900 XT when prices drop a little bit. Any other device for a powerful PC building? Do I need an ultra-wide monitor? Or even though I know it's not supported by Starfield. So, guys, let us talk about the monitor first. I know an ultra-wide monitor can be absolutely awesome, but there are only a few games actually supporting it properly. And if you're not a content creator where you would need like your entire timeline of your video that you're editing or something right in front of you, I think you get a lot more if you invest the money in a regular screen size, because then you can get like a little bit of higher quality there for the same money. And I think that is where you benefit the most from, in most cases, at least.
Yeah. See, I've got a 4K Ultra HD gaming monitor with all of the FreeSync, G-Sync, everything in it, 120 hertz HDR. So I've got a good monitor. It's a 28 inch as well, so it's a rather large monitor, but I'm like here. So I'm very close to it. But again, it's perfect because I use the Series S. It is still small enough to not require a big, again, the kind of native 4K, and I use it for, again, both PC gaming and the Series console, to mainly for kind of shooters and driving and things like that, because it's a little bit more quick reaction. And with, of course, the 1 millisecond latency on the screen, and the 120 hertz, of course, it gives us that kind of, should we say, a little bit more smoother output there. And again, you can get those kind of monitors. Doesn't have to be 28 inch, but you can get them of similar size for a few hundred now. LG Ultra Gears are always good. I don't know what you're using, Luke, but kind of again, LG Ultra Gear is probably one of the kind of main ones I would recommend.
Yeah, it's difficult because it depends on a lot of things. Budget. Obviously, that's a big one which determines a lot of what you'll look at in terms of the display space. For me, so I'm on my PC now. I actually use a 48-inch LG C10 OLED. So that's my monitor, which is just overkill. Like I'm like it's like there, yeah, but it's like it's big. But as Dutch was saying, I mean, if you've got a display that does 4K HDR, 120 or 144 hertz, it has FreeSync, G-Sync, you're pretty much set. There's no other feature set you'll need. The one thing I would say on ultra wide is my wife has I've never had an ultra wide monitor before, but my wife has an Alienware 34-inch QD OLED, which has G-Sync Premium HDR, and when games support that, they just look absolutely incredible. Like they look amazing on that panel. Like QD OLED in particular, if you can get a QD OLED panel with extra brightness for HDR, there is just nothing that comes close to it at all. It's on another level. And if a game properly supports ultra wide, it's great. But the problem is not every game does, or if it does, sometimes it's not really well optimized for ultra wide. So you might get small black bars, and it's kind of like it's a bit of a mixed bag. Most games do really well with it, but I would stick. I think if you're building a new rig, particularly one like that, which is powerful, 28 to 32 inch monitor with all the features that we've laid out. An LG one, an Asus one, MSI do pretty good monitors now as well. You won't go too far wrong, I don't think. If you can get an OLED one, which there's a lot more smaller OLED monitors coming out now as well, then even better.
Agree.
Yeah, and I would never go against a smaller monitor either, to be fair. Like a kind of middle ground 22, 24 inch, is still very good. And again, because of how much information you're kind of packing into these monitors, even if it's 1440p or 4K, regardless, I mean, both of those look super crisp and really high quality, as you mentioned. If they're LED or OLED, they're going to look pretty damn sharp, and especially the size they are. Like it's not like looking at Luke's cinema.
I will go blind one day. I'm fully expecting that, so I'm getting in all that I can before that happens.
But I don't know, like if and again, it depends on the type of gamer you are. But for me, I have noticed personally that I am significantly worse trying to sit on the sofa and play shooters or driving games lying back like this, like several meters away, playing these kind of high intensity games, than I am sitting directly here in front of a high performance monitor. Like, it's just, there is a noticeable difference in the performance for certain games.
Yeah.
Whereas I can go and chill out on a big screen and play like the likes of The Witcher or something like that, and that'll be at least 60 hertz or 75 hertz or something back there. That's fine. That does exactly what I need for a single player game. I don't need 120 hertz for The Last of Us. I don't need 120 hertz for Witcher. Yes, it's nice to have that extra smoothness, but 60 is fine. So I'm perfectly happy with that for like chilled out single player stuff. But multiplayer, absolutely a high quality monitor with high refresh rate and a few of the bells and whistles, specifically FreeSync, G-Sync to get that VRR.
Yeah.
Will smoothen things out like to no end.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and on the graphic card side of things, good choice to go with the AMDs. They are doing very well lately. When you look at the benchmarks, of course, it's the DLSS that you're missing out. But we come to this point where FSR, at least in the PC space, is an actual competitor there. Not quite there yet. But again, what you get for the price.
Iteration.
Yeah,
the first iteration of FSR wasn't great.
No, it wasn't.
No,
but DLSS 1.0 also was not really good.
It wasn't that good.
Yeah. And FSR 2 has made a significant jump. And what you get for the money when you compare AMD and Nvidia, and AMD became an actual alternative there. Good question. Then we had like dozens of questions coming in, of course, particularly for you with the likes of CMA, ABK things. So just want to shout out a couple of people like our good friend Sith Lord and Stuffed Sean and Sergeant Sentinel. I've read your questions, but we kind of discussed those already, so don't want to repeat it. I have a fantastic original question. I've never heard anyone ask for this from Ninja Squirrel, and I love it. Why is there no current gen horse racing game? Spent many found hours on G1 Jockey and Frankie Dettori Racing. I never heard of those games. The sport is very popular worldwide, having a live service format, race other players, and PvE career mode. Some horse breeding to add depth and time in-game to then rise in various race lengths and modes, flat and jumps, daily and weekly races, famous racetracks from around the world, etc. Would be good for a younger generation of fans of sport to have the ability to play a game of this sport also. When we have such a range of games these days, to even the GOAT simulator, I do not understand why the sport of kings has so far been neglected. Thoughts? I love the question.
I don't know what to say, really. It's a difficult one. I don't know, man. I mean, you got games for a lot of things, so I mean that they're right in that, surely there's room for a good horse racing game. Is it not like a horse racing simulator? Like how there's a simulator for everything. Like you could have like a football manager, but instead you lead a stable of horses,
could be. I've never heard of it.
Maybe I'm onto a trick there, and that'll sell gangbusters. I don't know. I don't know the state of demand for horse racing games, but
I mean, he can play The Witcher. You got horse racing in that.
Although Roach isn't. I mean, he's not very good, is he?
Roach? If you have upgraded everything
then
Roach,
he's better.
That's well, what about you and horse racing?
I have no idea. You're definitely asking the wrong one here. This is not something I've ever particularly enjoyed. It's very much an old person's thing around here. Occasionally they have ladies' day and things like that, but I've never been one that's fond of horse racing or anything like that. That's more elderly uncles and elderly family who like to put horse racing bets on, but I never took an interest in it. So I understand people might be, but yeah, I got no idea. I don't even know how popular that would be, but
I don't know, but
we
he's
should
got
do
a
it, man.
point. Hey, we have like the goat simulator and everything, like the power wash simulator and really lawn mowing simulator. We got games these days for everything, so it is kind of a wide spot there. Yeah. So great question. I love it. So guys, this brings our show to an end. We are a little bit above 2.5 hours now. I want to say a big thank you to Luke for joining us here today, to take the time out of your busy schedule. It's been a blast as always. So yeah, man, thank you for coming on, and let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Always really enjoy it and had a really, really great time. So thank you very much. And yeah, you can find me on Twitter at LukeSteele90. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that I'm on the Indie Game podcast on the Indie Gamer channel with the Indie Gamer. So if you like indie games, please go check that out because he does awesome content and I'm just there for the ride. So yeah,
it's
go and have a
the
look.
channel for indie games. No doubt. We need to get him back on the show, Dutch. I need to reach out to Indie.
Yeah, just say that there'll be a Hollow Knight Silksong world premiere on the show or something like that, and you'll drag him in. Drag him in.
You know what?
You know
what?
To him about that.
The gentleman right next to you here on the screen, he's putting together his yearly indie games showcase, and this has grown and grown and grown. And Dutch, you just revealed the trailer for the showcase. You gotta shout it out in a second. And you know what was in that trailer?
Silksong.
Now that you mentioned it there. So we have to. So Luke, again, thanks for coming on. And if you guys want to find Luke on Twitter, just click in the description of the show note. You will find his link there. And again, it's been a blast, man. So Dutch, I've already teased your big announcement of the week. But please do it properly.
Yes, of course. So the Community Indie Showcase is returning again for its 3rd annual event. This year is a bit different. So, of course, unlike previous 2 years, we've had one show and that's been it. They've both been relatively lengthy. Last year was 3.5 hours, so it was quite significant. There were a significant amount of games, however. There was over 100 games in total. So there was a lot to show. But we're doing a little bit differently this year. We're splitting them up and we're having 2 shows. So one is airing, and this has just been announced. So one is airing on the 23rd of April at 6 p.m. GMT, which is a Saturday. And of course, we will have an abundance of awesome content creators taking part in the first show that have already been lined up, including yourself, Boxenberger. We've also got an awesome special guest who is taking part again this year to a much greater depth. And a number of developers already confirmed as well that I've already spoken to and reached out to, and they're kind of just trying to get trailers and things together, ready to show. It's likely to have a runtime of around about 2-hour mark, 2-ish hours, but still more than 70 games shown. So it's going to be a lot to go.
Yeah.
There's going to be about eight content creators on this first show and about the same on the next. So it's going to be nice, streamlined. Same as last year, it is very little talking, a very lot of games. There's going to be brand new games shown off, brand new gameplay trailers. There's going to be unannounced games, and there's going to be unseen footage from games that are in development currently. Game giveaways, developers, studio heads, things like that. There's a lot of involvement from across the industry from indie developers. So it's always fun to put it together. It's always fun to work with a community to get this done. And of course, unlike regular content, this is not monetized at all. It can't be, of course, because there's so much music and music tracks and things in these things. So this is purely an event created for the community. There's no benefit personally to me for this show other than showcasing awesome games to you guys. So yes, I cannot wait for that the first one to air. It's strange saying the first one after the last 2 years, but can't wait for the first one to air on the 23rd of April.
The first one of this year. So yeah, man. By the way, you need to send me the trailer over, so we gotta start the promo as well during this show next week. So we can let it run here. You always do a fantastic job with these indie showcases. The last year in particular was mind-blowing. The best indie showcase of 2022. So I can't wait, man. It's exciting. I know you already told me a few things that will be in the show, and I'm not exaggerating. It is gonna be absolutely epic. So, other than that, guys, I want to say a big thank you for everyone who tuned in here today. Of course, also a special thank you for all the super chats that came in and the channel members. The support is truly appreciated and helps a lot. So thank you for that. And of course, also a shout out to everyone who listened on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts and whatever podcast service you're using. We appreciate a listen there as well. So yeah, next week we will return. We haven't figured out a guest yet for the next week, but there are two gentlemen actually as a potential guest next week. So it's going to be exciting next week. And other than that, I want to say a big thank you again to Luke. And of course, you, Dutch, for hosting with me. And I see you guys next week. And don't forget to game on.